Yes,
This
sir.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Right. So in the last class, we discussed a theoretical concept, understanding the different servers in what HANA database, that is architecture of what HANA database. Now today we'll start with procedures. Okay, procedures. So we can visualize this procedure is similar to what a subroutine, similar to what a function model, a method. So if you take our subroutine or a function model or a method, okay, we have to define them only once and can be called what any number of what times. Similarly, a procedure is also what a block of statements, a block of SQL statements, which is defined only once and can be handled any number of what times. Okay, and just like subroutine, this procedures also I can create with parameters or without parameters. So when do we go for procedure means? So far what we are doing in the SQL console, we are executing the SQL statements one after the other. Okay, we are executing individual SQL statements. So instead of that, I want to club multiple SQL statements inside a block. I want to execute them as a single call. So in a single call, I should able to execute what multiple SQL statements. And the same statements it has to if it has to be executed at many places, we'll go for defining what procedures. The advantage of procedures is we have to define them only once and can be called any number of times. So as of today, we'll directly create the procedure in the SQL console. But the agenda is we should once we create the procedure, I should able to consume it from what ABAP layer also means from our ABAP executable programs also we should able to access the procedures which you have created in the HANA database. So what are the business logic you want to implement? What are the business logic you want to execute? That business logic will embed as part of a procedure and then uh, we can consume that procedure from what ABAP layer. So as of today, we'll just create it directly in the SQL console. If you create the procedure in the SQL console, okay, I cannot consume it from ABAP layer. Going forward, we'll be seeing some standard methodology to create the procedure, and then we'll access that procedure from what ABAP layer. Okay. So a procedure is nothing but a block of statements which is defined only once and can be called any number of times. It can be created with or without parameters. So let us see once. Let us start with simple example. So I'll open the SQL console. I'll set the schema for this. Okay, schema is set for our what session. Done. Now I need to create the procedure. So if you observe our schema, if I expand this procedures, if I expand, okay, so under procedure you can see we have something called as what a table type. Table type. If I expand this, yeah, I don't have any procedures as of now. Okay, so let us create the procedure. So it's very simple. So create procedure. So whenever we create the procedure, before creating the procedure, we need to visualize whether we have to create the procedure with parameters or without parameters. Okay, so as of now, I want to create a simple procedure which has to show me what some welcome message. Whenever we execute the procedure, it has to show me the welcome message. So I'll say create procedure. I'll give the procedure name something, say hello. Okay, I can write everything in the same line, but just to increase the readability, I'll put it in the next line, separate lines as begin and end. So between this begin and end, we need to implement the procedure. Okay, so what is the requirement here? Just I want to display some welcome message. So I'll just select welcome to procedures. Okay, select welcome to procedures from dummy. So already we know dummy is what? It is a dynamic table, okay, which is created in the runtime to hold the values temporarily. Okay, this dummy table doesn't exist physically. It is a dynamic table which gets created and destroyed after execution. Okay, it is used for holding the values temporarily. So let me try to execute this procedure. When I say F8, yeah, the procedure got created. So if I refresh here, yeah, the procedure got created. Okay, let me try to double click on this procedure. Whatever the procedure available in the schema, I'll double click on this. Okay, so it is opening me in a separate session here. This is a procedure which we created. Okay, done. So what is the next requirement here? I should call that particular procedure. So as of now, I am calling that procedure from the SQL console. But generally, what we'll do, we'll access that procedure from your ABAP layer. But this procedure, I cannot access it from the ABAP layer at this stage because we have not followed any standards. We have not followed any standards while creating this particular procedure. If you want to consume this procedure from the ABAP layer, one second please. Yeah, if you want to consume that procedure from the ABAP layer, we need to create that procedure inside one system schema called as sys underscore big. Am I clear? In order to consume the procedure from the ABAP layer, the standard we need to follow is we need to store the procedure inside what sys underscore big schema. So just storing it in sys underscore big we cannot consume. Once we store the procedure inside the schema, we need to create something called as database procedure proxy. Okay, again there is a separate navigation for creating that. We need to create database procedure proxy, and that proxy we need to consume it from what ABAP layer. So again that is a different navigations again. So we'll see that in couple of days. So for the time being, let me try to call that procedure from the what SQL console only. Just like before calling any subroutine or a function model or a method, we will check the signature of those things, you know, in the sense we will check whether that the function model is having any parameters, what are the data type of the parameters, all those things. Similarly here also, before calling the procedure we need to check the signature to understand whether it contains any parameters. I don't have any parameters, so let us call the procedure. So how do you call? Simply you have to use the keyword call. What is the procedure name? Say hello. Call, say hello. That's all. This is a way to call the procedure. Just like we'll say perform subroutine, call function, call method. Here you have to say call procedure name. So when I execute, I got some results. What is the result I got? Welcome to procedures. So this is the simplest way to create the procedure and call that particular procedure. Okay, let me quickly create another procedure. Create procedure. I'll give a procedure name as something procedure 2, some name as begin. Okay. Inside this procedures, I can declare the variables. I can declare the local variables. How do you declare a variable inside a block? We use a keyword called as declare. Okay, we have to use a keyword called as declare, just like data keyword in our ABAP. Here we use what declare. So I'll just declare one variable v underscore x. I'll declare it as what integer. Okay, and I'll try to assign some data in this v underscore x equal to 10. I want to print the value of that x. I'll say select v underscore x. Okay, before I execute, in the earlier procedure, I said what select so and so string from dummy. So if you see the result, I got the result here, and you can see the column heading also. Column heading also, I got the same thing. Welcome to procedures. This one. Okay. So here, what I'll do, select v underscore x as I'll give some alias name. So I'll just give the alias name as something my variable from dummy, and that's all. Okay, so procedure will be created. So when I say execute, procedure got created. Let us call the procedure. I'll say call procedure 2. Okay, call procedure 2. Let me execute this. I'll say F8. Yeah, I got the result what 10. What is the column heading I got? My var. So I'm just giving some alias. So what I did in this example is just I created a procedure. Inside the procedure definition, I declared a variable. How to declare the variable? By using a keyword called as what? Declare. One second, just a minute. Okay, so I created the procedure. Inside the procedure, I declared a variable, and I'm assigning some value to that, and then I'm just displaying that particular variable value. While displaying this, I gave some column alias name. Column alias name. Let me create one more procedure. Let me give the procedure name as procedure 3. Okay, I'll declare this variable. Declare v underscore res. So here I'll say v underscore res is equal to, I'll just give some, I'm directly assigning the calculation here. So earlier what I did here, I've just assigned a value. Now I'm assigning the calculation itself. 10 plus 45. Let's see whether we'll get the result or not. What is the variable I declared? Res. So select v underscore res as I can give any column heading. Okay, so earlier you can see I gave the column alias name like this, my var. I can provide that in double quotes also. So whether you give double quotes or doesn't matter. If you want, you can give that double quotes also. That's all. So what I'm trying to show in this example is I'm directly assigning the calculation to that particular variable. Let me execute. Yeah, it got created. The procedure got created. Let me call this procedure. Call. I'll give the procedure name as procedure 3. Execute. I got the result something what 55. Okay. So far we just created the procedures without any parameters, and we understood how to declare the variables inside the procedure. How to declare by using a keyword called as what declare. Now what I will do is I want to create the variable. I want to create a procedure which has to take some parameters. So if you take our ABAP context, if you take subroutines, if you want to pass integers as parameters, we use a keyword called as using. Okay, perform ABC using some X and Y. Or if you take subroutines, what are the sorry, if you take function modules, what are the parameters you want to pass, that you'll specify under what importing sections. Here also, I just want to create a procedure which has to which should contain some two input parameters, I have to perform the sum of those two input parameters and display the result. So here the focus is how to pass the parameters. Okay, so the logic is not important. Focus is what how to what pass the parameters. So I'll just give the procedure name as procedure 4. Create procedure 4. Yeah, I want to pass parameters. So what I'll do, I can directly write here, but just to increase the readability, I'm putting it in a separate line. So here I'll say inside the parentheses, I'll use a keyword called as in x comma int, and again I'll say in y comma int. What does this in indicates here? Input parameter. In indicates input parameter. Okay, done. Yeah, then as usual, I'll say as begin. Now I want to perform the sum of these two parameters. So I require one variable. How to declare variable inside the procedure? By using a keyword called as declare. I'll say declare v underscore res something integer. I'll say v underscore res is equal to what? X plus y. V underscore is equal to x plus y. Then I'll say select what? V underscore res as I want to give some column heading alias name. So I'll just give something as result from dummy. What is this dummy? It is a dynamic table which will be created in the runtime, and it is used for holding the values temporarily. This table doesn't exist physically. If you take any databases, this table is available called as a dummy. Okay, it is a dynamic table which is available during runtime, and it is used for holding the values temporarily. So let me try to create this procedure. I'll execute. I'll say fetch. Yeah, the procedure got created. What is the signature of the procedure? So if you observe this, let me refresh. This is our schema Gensoft HANA. Okay, I'll just refresh. Yeah. What is the procedure name? Procedure 4. So if I double click on this procedure 4, this is a procedure. It is showing me what some two input parameters. Okay, so let me try to call the procedure. How do we call? Excuse me, please. 1 second.
This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah. So yeah, what we have done, we have created the procedure. What is the signature of the procedure? It contains what two input parameters. Okay. So now let me try to call it. So I'll say call procedure. Call. What is the procedure name? Procedure 4. But if you see the signature of the procedure, it is expecting what two input parameters. But while I'm calling the procedure, I am not passing the parameters. So let's see what happens when I execute this. When I say fetch, yeah, what happened here? I got an error. What is the error I got? Wrong number or types of parameters in the call. Wrong number or types of parameters in the call. X is not bound. So what is the understanding? What are the input parameters we have passed here? They are always what? Mandatory parameters. The input parameters are what? Mandatory parameters. So I need to what? Compulsory pass the values for those input parameters at the time of calling the procedure. So since I'm not calling, I'm getting what? Syntax error. Okay. So let me try to call now. Here I'll say, I'll keep this as it is for your reference. I'll say call procedure what? Call procedure 4. Okay. So in the parentheses, I'll say what? Something 10. Okay. So again, what you are doing here, out of two parameters, we are passing the value only for what? One parameter. So let's see what is the error I'll get. Earlier, what is the error I got? Wrong number or types of parameters in the call X is not bound. Now I'm passing the value 10 here. When I execute, yeah, I got a similar error here. What is the error I got? Y is not bound. So compulsory, I need to pass the value for what? Both the parameters. I'll say call procedure 4. Okay, I'll give something 10 and what 20. So the system will have the intelligence that it will take x value as 10 and y value as what 20. So let me try to execute f8. I got the result what something 30. So what is the understanding? Input parameters are always what? Mandatory. Input parameters are always mandatory. Okay. So the procedure is what created. I can call it in another way also. So here the understanding is for the first parameter x it will take 10. For the second parameter y it will take what 20. I can also do like this, call procedure 4. Okay, here first I want to pass the value for the second parameter. So you need to specify that particular parameter name. How do you specify? The syntax is slightly different here. So you have to say y implies what? Something 25. And what is the other parameter? X. Huh? X implies something 56. Something like this. Okay. So explicitly we are mentioning the parameter name. So when I execute, I got the result something what? 81. Any questions so far? Any questions? Yeah, very simple. Going forward, uh, okay, in the next 1 or 2 days, we will be seeing the complex procedures. Complex in the sense where we will actually implement the business logic and we'll try to consume that process from the ABAP layer. Okay, so here just we are trying to understand the syntax. Yeah, let me create another procedure. One second. Yeah, I'll do a small change here. See the change. I'll create another procedure. Let me give the procedure name as 5. Okay, here I will not specify the type of parameter. Means I'm not specifying whether it is input parameter or output parameter. So in the earlier case, you can see for both the parameters, I use the keyword what? In. I use the keyword in. Explicitly, you are specifying that as what? Input parameter. Now in this procedure, what I did, I specified two parameters, but for the first parameter, I am not specifying the type of parameter. I mean to say, I'm not specifying the category of the parameter, whether it is input parameter or output parameter or whether it is in-out parameter. I'm not specifying that. Done, 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 done. Okay, let me execute. Let's see whether it will create the procedure or not. F8. What happened? The procedure got what? Created. Let me try to consume. I mean to say access. Call procedure 5. I'll give some values 34 and 21. F8. I got the result what? 55. So what is the understanding? By default, the procedure parameter category is what? Input parameter. If you don't specify the category of the parameter, I mean to say the type of parameter, it will take it as what? Input parameter. Okay. Now what I want to create a procedure which contains both input parameter and output parameter. So if you take our C, C++, even Java also, we have functions. In C, C++, Java, a function can return only one value. A function can return only one value, and that is done by using what? Return keyword. But if you take our ABAP context, our subroutines, our function modules, our methods can return what? Any number of what? Values. In our ABAP, we can return any number of values. So if you take our function models, the number of return values depends upon what? Number of export parameters. Here also in this HANA database also, a procedure can return what? N number of what? Values. So let's see how to return the values. So I'll say create procedure. I'll be a procedure name as something procedure 6. Yeah. In the parentheses, I'll say input parameter x as integer. Then I'll take another parameter input parameter as again integer. And here I'll say out. Okay. How do you return the values from procedure? by specifying the category of the parameter dot out. Out, I'll give some variable name integer, and here also I'll say out R2 is what? Integer. Done. Done. I'll say as begin. Yeah. So if you observe the earlier cases, my procedure doesn't have the output parameter. So what I did inside my procedure block, I declared one local variable by using the declare keyword, and I'm storing the calculations inside that local variable. I'm trying to display it. Here, as part of my procedure signature, I specified the output parameters. So directly I can use them now. I'll say R1 is equal to what? X plus Y. I'll take another parameter. What is that? R2. R2 is equal to what? X minus Y. And okay. So let me try to execute this. The procedure got what? Created. What is the signature of the procedure? To input parameters and what? To output parameters. Again, if you take our ABAP function modules, in case of ABAP function modules, one second, let me switch on the charging. Yeah, in case of our ABAP function models, how do you return the values from a function model? By specifying them under what? Export parameters, export section. And we know that in ABAP, in case of function models or in case of methods also, export parameters are always optional. I repeat, in our ABAP function models or ABAP methods, export parameters are always optional. Means when we are calling them, it is developer choice whether to import the return values or not. Even if you ignore also, no problem. Means export parameters are always optional. So here also, let me check whether they are optional or not. So I'll check call. What is the procedure name? Procedure 6. Call procedure 6. I'm passing the value something 23 and something what 56, 23 and 56. So according to the procedure signature, we have two input parameters, two output parameters, overall four parameters. So it will bound what? 23 to x, 56 to y. Okay, let's see whether it is valid or not. This is very much valid in case of our ABAP function models or ABAP methods, because there the export parameters, I mean to say the return parameters are always optional. Here when I execute, when I say F8, I got an error here. What is that? Wrong number or type of parameters in the call. R1 is not bound. So what is the meaning? Here in case of HANA databases, output parameters are also what? Mandatory. Compulsory we need to bound. Compulsory we need to receive them. Otherwise you'll get what? Syntax error. Okay. So now I'll say, I'll keep this as it is. Call procedure 6. I'll pass some values 56 and something 21. Yeah, I'm interested to receive that particular parameter. So I will say question mark and question mark. We call them as placeholders. Placeholders. Okay. So let's see whether this works or not. When I say effect, yeah, I got the result what? 77 and what? 35. Output parameter 1 is 77, output parameters 2 is what? Something 35. Hope it's clear. I can also call like this, call procedure 6. I can specify the parameter names explicitly. So here I want to pass the value for a y first. So y implies 89, then I'll say x implies something 43, and then what is the other parameters? R1. R1 implies what? Placeholder. Then R2 implies what? Placeholders. Let me cross check y, x, R1 and R2. Done. When I execute that, I got the result what? Something 132 and what? Minus 46 itself. The understanding is output parameters are also what? Mandatory. Hope it's clear to everyone. Any questions? Okay, right. So they're all very simple things. So now, so far what we are doing inside the procedure is we just understood how to pass the input parameters, how to receive the output parameters, how to declare the variables. Now, as part of this procedure business logic, we can write the select queries also. Okay, so let me quickly create procedure. Before that, let me check any tables are available. Yeah. Okay, I'll take these tables. Do we have data in this? I'll consider this table t underscore what emp. I'll open the definition. That this is the table definition: employee number, employee name, department number. Let me query for the data. Yeah, data is also there. So I want to create a procedure which has to return the data from this table. So create procedure, procedure 7, some name. Okay, so here I'll say as begin. Okay, as begin. And then here I'll simply say select star from, and only three columns are there. So I'll say select star from t underscore emp end. So I'm just writing the select query here. Select star from t underscore emp. When I execute, the procedure got created. Let me call the procedure, call procedure 7. I got the data. Okay, so what I'm trying to show is we can write the select statement here. Okay, now here in this case, if you see, it is simply returning the data. It is simply returning the data. My requirement is, hmm, my requirement is, mm, yeah, I want to what are the data this selection is returning? I want to store it in a variable. Okay, here in this case, what is the logic in the procedure? I'm simply saying select star from so and so. So when I call the procedure, I got the result. I got the result returned by my select query. So my requirement is what? This, the result of the select query, this output, the content, I want to store it in a variable. So why we have to store it in a variable? So that I can process that particular variable. Here we are just retrieving and displaying. But what I want to store this result set. We call it as what? Result set. I want to store the result set in a variable so that I can process that variable. I mean to say I can loop that, I can do some manipulations on that particular result set. Before showing the result, I want to do some manipulation. So here I don't want to do the manipulation, just I want to show you how to store it in a what? A temporary variable kind of thing. So let me create the procedure. Create procedure. I'll give the procedure name as something procedure, right? So the same thing. Achha, what is the definition of the table? It has got three columns: employee number, employee name, department number. I'm interested to fetch only employee number and what? Employee name. I want to fetch only employee number and employee name. So here, see the intelligence of this tool. I'll say some variable my tab is equal to. I'm not declaring that. I'm not declaring that variable. Directly I'll say my tab or my I tab, my internal table is equal to select. I'm interested only in two columns. I'll say select employee number, comma, employee name. So here the thing you have to focus is I have not declared this particular variable. I am not specifying the structure of the variable. It will be dynamically created. So let's see what happens here. My I tab equal to select employee number. So earlier what I did, directly when I execute the select query, I got the result. I got the result from that particular table. Now the result of that select query, I am storing it in a variable. So let me try to create the procedure. Then the procedure is created. I'll try to call that procedure. Also call, what is the procedure name? Procedure 8. F8. See here? Again I'll try to execute. I'll say F8. I didn't got any results. I didn't got any result. Why? Because whatever the result the select query is returning, that I have stored in a variable called as what? My iTab. We are not what displaying that particular content. The procedure is successfully created, the procedure is successfully getting called, but we are not getting the result because the result is stored inside the variable what? My itab. I am not accessing that particular variable to display the result. So what is the change I'll do now? See, create procedure. I'll be the procedure name as procedure. Same thing. My itab equal to so and so. Here I'll say what? select star from what is that variable name? My itab. Select star from my itab. Okay, so let's see what happens. Select star from my itab. When I execute, yeah, when I execute, I got an error. Okay, create process so and so invalid table name, could not find the table or view my itab in the schema Jansa of Tana. So can anyone tell me what is the adjustment I have to do? I got an error, cannot find the table or could not find the table or view my tab in the schema so and so. Can anyone tell me what is the adjustment we need to do? Yeah, yeah, correct. Okay, so the change you have to do is, yeah, I'll keep this as it is for your reference. So if I leave it like this, what happens? It will check for this particular what database objects. As part of select statement, what we can do, what we can use a table or what view. It will check for the existence of that particular table or view in the current schema. It is not available. That's why it is giving the error. So I need to instruct saying that it is not a what permanent table available in the schema. It is available as part of your procedure. So how do you indicate that? By using this colon, by using this bind operator. So when I execute now, it is creating. It is creating. Yeah, the procedure got what? Creating. Let me try to call. Understood? So when we have to use this colon, if it is not a database object, if it is not a database object, if it is referring to the variable inside your procedure, you have to use this particular colon. Let me try to call now. I'll say call. What is the procedure name? Procedure 9. Then I got the result employee number and what employee name. Okay. So what is the understanding here is I need not priorly declare the structure of this. Whatever the result set returned by your select query, based upon that result set, it will dynamically create that particular variable. Now I can do a slightly different way. See the change here. I'll say, okay, create procedure. Let me give the procedure name as something 10. Okay, for this procedure, try to understand. For this procedure, I'll declare what one output parameter. Out, I'll give the output parameter name as itab. And earlier I specified the type of the parameter something integer. Now I'll say I'll refer to my database object t underscore what? Emp. Out itab t underscore emp. Here what I'll do, I'll say itab is equal to what? Just to increase the readability, itab is equal to select star from what is my database table from where you want to query the data t underscore emp. That's all. Okay, so what I am doing here, I am assigning the result set to the output parameter. I am assigning the result set to the output parameter. So when I say fit, the procedure got created. I'll try to call that call procedure 10. This should give me an error because we are not binding the output parameter. Means you might get an error saying that so and so output parameter is not bound. So when I execute, I got an error. Yeah, iTab is not bound. So compulsory you have to bound it. So I'll say here call, what is that, procedure 10. Okay, here what is the parameter name? Okay, I can directly give the placeholder also. I can directly give the placeholder. Understood. So placeholder indicates what? Output parameter. How many output parameters are there? Only one output parameter. So when I execute, I will get the result. Okay, or I can explicitly specify the parameter name also. Call procedure 10. Okay, what is the output parameter name? iTab implies, right? So when I execute, I got the same result. I got the same result. Now I'll say slightly different. What is the result I'll get if I execute this? Anyone? I should get an error. Na? Simple reason is the formal parameter name and the actual parameter name are what? Different. Okay. The here, if you see the formal parameter name, okay, what are the parameters we specify as part of procedure definition? We call it as formal parameters. What are the parameters we pass at the time of calling the procedure? We call them as actual parameters. So in this context, we don't have any formal parameter with the name what? RTAB. So obviously, I'll get an error. So when I execute, yeah, I got an error. What is the error I got? RTAB not found in the parameter definition. Yeah, hope it's clear to everyone. Any questions? So far we just created the procedure, but we are not processing that particular result set. What you are doing so far is when you are executing, we are getting the result. But what is my requirement? I want to process this result. Means I need to store it in some temporary place. I need to loop that and I need to do some processing. So let us quickly see an example to understand the actual advantage of this process. One second. One second, please. Just check the signature of this, definition of this. Okay, I don't have designation. Okay, so quickly let me create one table. I'll be using this table for the next few sessions. So let me create the table. One second. I don't have that. So let me quickly create that. So already we know how to create the table. So I'll say create table. I'll give the table name as something what? Employee underscore department. Okay. As part of this table, let me create some columns. Employee number, I'll give it as something primary key. Then I'll give another column employee name. I'll give it as what? Varchar of 20. Then employee designation, varchar of something 20. Then I'll take employee salary. I'll take it as integer or int or integer. Both are same. Then I'll take what? Department number. I can give int or I can give int here. Doesn't matter. So I'm just creating the table with how many columns? 5 columns. Employee number, employee name, employee designation, employee salary and department number. Done. Let me execute this. Oh, what happened? Oh, sorry. I gave semicolon here, na? It should be comma, right? Okay, the table got created. Let me quickly insert the data into this. I'll say insert into, what is the table name? Employee underscore department values. I'll give some data here. What is this? Employee number, employee name, Then designation, so I'll give something manager, then salary 1000, and department number I'll give 10. Like this, let me insert some records. Quickly I'll insert some records so that I'll be using it for the further classes. Okay, I'll change the designations also. I'm just changing the data. For the eighth one also, let me be employee, supervisor, employee number 9. Okay, let me give it as something manager. Supervisor, how many records I do? Two records. I'll give one more record. Supervisor. Done. Supervisor, manager, supervisor, employee, manager. Done. Okay. I'll give some salaries also. I'll just change it. 2000, 3000. This I'll give it as 4000, 5000, 6000, 7000, 8000. What else? 9000. This I'll give it as something 10,000. Okay. Department numbers also I'll change. I'll give it as 10, 20, 30. This also I'll give it as 10, 20, 30. Done. And this again I'll give 10, 20, 30. This is 10. Okay, right? So I just created the table. I'm maintaining some data here. Let me execute. 9,000, 10,000, 6,000. I want to use this table for future examples also. That's why I'm maintaining proper data. Okay, done. Let me execute this. Yeah, all the 10 records are created. So if I refresh, what is the table name? Employee underscore department. So and this table has got this 10 records. Okay. So my requirement here is, yeah, my requirement here is, I want to create a procedure. Okay. Hmm. I want to create a procedure to increment. Okay. Before that, do we have? Okay. I'll do one thing. Hmm. Yeah. There's a table which is having some 10 records. Based on this table, I'll create two more tables. What I'll do, I'll say create table. I'll give the table name as something employee underscore department underscore MNG. Employee underscore department underscore MNG. Like what? What is the existing table? Employee underscore department. So I'm trying to create one more table, employee underscore department underscore MNG like employee underscore department. So let me try to execute this. MNG na okay. Table got created. I'll create one more table, employee underscore department underscore. I'll give the table name as non-manager like employee underscore department. Effect. that the table got created. So if I refresh here, the two tables are also available. Employee underscore department underscore manager, department underscore non-manager. If you see this table, it has got 10 records. Let me query this table. Okay, when I say open data preview, I don't have any data. Let me preview the data from this table. I don't have data in that table also. Okay, so in these two tables, only the structure is available. The structure of the table is same 5 columns, but we don't have any data. So already we know this like operator, if you use like this, it just create a table based on the existing table without any data. So my requirement now is, try to understand. I want to create a procedure to increment the manager's salary by 5%. Try to understand. I want to create a procedure to increment the manager's salary by 5%. Okay, and copy that particular corresponding records to a table called as what, MNG, that is this table. Okay, and what is the other requirement? And non-manager salary by what, 10%, and copy those corresponding records to another table called as what, non-manager. So what is my overall requirement? This table has got some 5 columns with some 10 records. So I want to implement one functionality. What is that functionality? All the manager salary should be incremented by 5%. After incrementing, sorry, after incrementing, copy that corresponding records to what, manager table, and all the non-manager salary, non-managers means it can be employee or supervisor, all the non-manager salary I need to increment by 10%, and then copy the corresponding records to what, another table called as what, non-manager, non-manager. This is my overall requirement. Okay, so how do we do it? Anyone? Approach. What is the approach you would follow? If you take our normal ABAP context, okay, assume that we have the same kind of functionality. So how do we do it there? We'll declare some internal table. We'll get this entire data into the internal table, and we will loop the internal table. Understood? We'll use loop and loop, and inside that loop and loop, we'll write some condition statements by using if statement. We'll check whether salary is so and so. If the salary is so and so, we'll implement some business logic to increase the salary, and then we'll append that records. We'll append that particular record to what, table A, and the other record to what, table B. That is a general logic we write. So how do we write this in HANA database? Approach. Anyone?
We create a procedure, uh,
Okay. So
so same,
compulsory you have to go for procedure. Okay. Inside that, next.
yeah, we declared the table with the semicolon concept, internal table.
Okay.
In the select query, like we will uh, display the salary content with some calculation, like 5% calculation, pass them
Okay.
into internal table. So this is the incremented salary of managers.
But you will write how many selects? Only one select statement, or how is it?
That is one select statement. In where condition we will write only manager. That is in one internal table.
Okay. Okay. You are saying that you will be taking two different select statements. One where
Yes.
class is with managers, another
Yeah.
where class is
The class
other than managers.
other than managers.
Okay, so you are executing two select statements there. I want it only one select statement.
Hmm.
Kishore, anyone? What is the approach? I want the approach. Anyone? See, anyway, I'll cover this tomorrow, but I'll give a clue here. If you take our ABAP context, I don't know how many of you aware of
When
this. Yeah, tell me.
select the data and use when condition or something.
No,
When
no,
manager.
no. Here my requirement is after incrementing that incremented record, that corresponding record should be transferred to other table. Okay, so for this, what you have to do is you have to go for procedures only. But inside that procedures, we need to go for a concept called as cursors. So if you take our normal ABAP also, in our OpenSQL and native SQL, we use two types of SQL statements there, OpenSQL and native SQL. There we use cursors. So if you remember in our normal ABAP, when do we go for cursors is when you want to process what result set, we'll go for what cursors. This cursors is similar to what internal tables. So we'll have some standard procedure. First we'll what declare the cursor, then we will open the cursor, then we will read the cursor, then we will close the cursor. Okay, these are the four activities you have to perform here also. Okay, so in order to meet this particular requirement, the approach should be first get the data, first get the data into the cursor, get the data into the cursor, then we need to read the cursor from first record to last record. For every read, I have to do some conditions. I have to check whether read is successful or not. So again, in that you have to check whether the read is whether designation is equal to manager. If it is manager, I have to implement some business logic and I have to insert that record into the manager's table. If it is other than manager, increment the salary by 10% and insert that record into what? Another table. So the answer is we have to go for cursors. So if you have time today, in our normal ABAP, either in OpenSQL uh, and native SQL. Actually, this is what I told is related to OpenSQL. But if you take native SQL, in case of native SQL, I need not declare the cursor. I can directly open the cursor. I can read the cursor. But in case of OpenSQL, we'll follow these four steps. So if you have time, just refer to that cursors in our normal ABAP. Here, the way we declare open, read, and close it, the syntax is slightly different. But the procedure is what? Same. So we'll be discussing this example tomorrow. Okay. So practice up to this point. If you have time, refer to the cursors in our ABAP. Okay, so based on that, we'll implement that in the HANA database. Cursors are similar to internal tables. Cursors are similar to internal tables. But related to internal table, just your declaration will store the data in the internal. We'll use loop and loop. Here, we use these four steps: declaring, opening, reading, and closing. Okay. Reading means we use some statement called as, if you remember, fetch statement. Fetch statement. And when you're declaring the cursor, we can associate the declaration of cursor only with the select query. Okay, anyhow, this part I'll discuss tomorrow. We'll see this example tomorrow. We are done with the table creation, all this thing. The business logic will implement tomorrow. Done? And tomorrow, if time permits, we'll try to create the procedure in a standard way so that we can consume it from what? ABAP layer. Whatever we have created so far, I cannot consume it from the ABAP layer because we have not stored in the sys big schema and we have not created any proxy for that. So tomorrow, if time permits, we'll create the proxy and we'll try to consume it from our ABAP reports. Okay. So any questions for today? Chalo then. So I'll wind off. Just practice this. We'll continue tomorrow. Okay.